Hello, Tar Heel Nation. We are back. I know last time I said it was the last podcast. We're back. We're still live. We're going to kick UNC basketball as we knew, or as we knew. I don't think that's proper English, but as we knew then, as we know now, is going to keep going on. It will continue, and another big day in UNC basketball. So of course we're back here. I got Gil joining me. But we are talking all about Hubert Davis, now Coach Davis, head coach Hubert Davis. Before we get into him and everything that's surrounding that, Gil, you doing well?
Yes, thank you for having me on.
All right, so yeah, we're just gonna keep trugging along here with these live podcasts, and as long as North Carolina gives us news, we're gonna keep going with it. So we're glad to have you guys watching. If you're joining us live here on YouTube. Make sure you comment, join the conversation here, give us questions, comments, your thoughts, all those good things. If you're listening to this later as a podcast, make sure you're subscribed. And if you'd like to ever catch us as we go live, we do not have a good schedule about this. So go over to YouTube and subscribe and hit the little bell to be notified when we go live. And you can jump in and join in the conversation and with us as we talk through all this. So yeah, I was just going to kind of start here with Hubert Davis being named, obviously, head basketball coach. It kind of leaked yesterday and was, I guess, announced by the university as well. But introductory press conference today. So Hubert Davis, now the head basketball coach, the 19th head basketball coach of the University of North Carolina, played for Dean Smith from 88 to 92. Went to one Final Four in there in 91, losing to Roy Williams, of course, in 91. And then he went on to play in the NBA from 92 to 2004 with several different teams. Scored over 5,500 points in the NBA. I think when he left, he was had the highest percentage of three-pointers made. I think he's down to second now, but very successful NBA career before going on to ESPN as a college basketball analyst. We know him, of course, from College Game Day all those years with Jay Billis and Reese Davis, and I don't think Greenberg was there yet. I think he was on with Jay Williams a lot before coming back home in 2012 and has been assistant coach for North Carolina since 2012, going to two more Final Fours, winning the championship, of course, in 2017, and now adds another line to his resume as he becomes, like I said, the 19th head basketball coach for the university and the first African-American coach. Gil, that's a lot of talking by me. Kind of what were your thoughts here as we heard the news, and you can go into the press conferences if you want to, kind of just wherever you want to go with that.
Yeah, congratulations to Hubert. One of my favorite players when I was growing up under Dean Smith. He just personifies persistence, hard work. He's a class act, both on and off the court, as a player, as a person, and now as a head coach and as a grown man. So he's a perfect fit, bridges the transition from Roy Williams to the future of Carolina basketball perfectly because he played under Dean, he's coached under Roy, obvious connection to the family, loves Carolina. He announces himself, "I'm a Tar Heel." So he's the perfect fit. And although there may have been kind of some, I want to say, sexier options, it seemed like, out there, none of them will really have the resume like you just announced, particularly the Tar Heel specific resume and credentials that Hubert brings. So I'm really excited. If you watch the press conference today, he's well spoken. But you see the passion that he brings and how excited he is. He used the word excited so many times in the press conference about taking on this new role and this new challenge for him. And I think the players like him. It was perfect for roster retention. We've maintained the commitments of Dontrez Styles and DeMarco Dunn, and he obviously already has a rapport and relationship with the current roster. And so congrats again to Hubert Davis. I'm really excited. Like I said, I loved him as a player. I was pleased and somewhat surprised at how great of an NBA career he had. And I think that's something that speaks to Hubert, is he's always proven himself and had to prove himself, but always risen to the occasion and overachieved throughout his lifetime and all of his endeavors. Hopefully he'll do the same on the sideline for the Tar Heels.
Yeah, and so like you said, everybody has been pumped. He definitely won the press conference, and so hopefully, I mean, we've come across expressing that and realizing that. Phenomenal speaker. I think his time at ESPN kind of shows he's comfortable in front of, crowds, but also in cameras and just kind of public speaking, I guess you would say. And so he definitely, won the press conference. And like you said, the perfect fit. I think, and I'll kind of get into it, but I've come around kind of that he is kind of the perfect fit. And obviously you hear his passion for the university and for the job that he's about to get into, and I don't think I can say it any better. He's the perfect fit for the University of North Carolina. He may not have the best qualifications. Obviously, he hasn't been a head coach. May not have the best qualifications to be a head coach of a Power Five or one of the best programs in the nation. But since it's North Carolina that we're talking about, he is kind of the perfect fit. And so I had said on the podcast, I've said us texting and on Twitter, I think even before, I thought they should go after like the Mark Few's, the Scott Drew, Brad Stevens, kind of the bigger, sexier names in the coaching profession. But since they went with Hubert, and again, I've come around to kind of that he has the perfect fit. I'm glad that they announced it before Monday's game. I think that's kind of a big deal and something that a lot of people maybe kind of glance over and like, what does it matter? But if you're not going to go after those, and maybe we don't know what happened. Maybe they put kind of feelers out to Mark Few's agent. I don't think Mark Few was probably taking phone calls as he's preparing for the national championship, and probably the same with Scott Drew. But maybe their agents, they kind of put feelers like, how do you think they will be, want this job? Are they interested at all? And maybe they got turned down. We don't know that background stuff, but whether they did that or not, if they were going with Hubert, or once they knew it was Hubert, I think it was important to announce it before that game so that people don't say, oh, they must have been turned down from Mark Few, or, Hubert is a backup choice, or it doesn't seem like that was the case at all. Again, whether they made phone calls to those guys or not, it doesn't seem like he kind of was the third choice or even the second choice. It seems like he was Bubba Cunningham and the Chancellor's, guess so it's his first choice. And because that's the case, they made it known before Monday's game, and I think that gives Hubert some confidence. Again, knowing he wasn't behind somebody else, and I think it's important for the players to know that. I think it's recruits, all those things going in, and then obviously as we get into the press conference, just again the passion he spoke with, and how perfect of a fit that he feels he is, and I think Tar Heel Nation now feels he is beneficial going forward in that way. And again, if you look at Twitter, like you said, the players, all former players that were coached under him as assistant, or that he coached as an assistant, current guys on the roster. It seems like he's got everybody's kind of blessing, everybody's behind him, and just stoked that he got the job. And obviously, fans as well. People crying during the press conference, people ready for, I'm ready for the season. I said that too. Like, when does college basketball start now? Like, let's go. Like, people have said they're ready to jump through the wall for him. So I don't know. Obviously, we're ready. We feel that he's the right guy. I mean, at this point, right, there's it's easy to say, but is there somebody else you would have rather had?
No, it's especially since the announcement, and the feeling of it just feels so right. There, you think about some of the other potential candidates, some of the names that were floated out there, and according to Bubba Cunningham in the press conference, he announced that he had a broad search. So I think he did his due diligence and reached out, and we don't know how those things transpired, and we might not, or we might find out a little bit more information in the next few days and weeks to come. But ultimately, I think they found the right fit, and that's come like glaringly obvious, it seems to me at least, and I think most of Tar Heel Nation, of just how well he's responded in his short time in the head coach role, and just it's just right, and I think that it was important. I think obviously Roy understands the Carolina family. He's been that torchbearer for 18 years, and I'm sure his evaluation and his endorsement was significant. But even if he didn't endorse Hubert, which I believe he strongly did, I'm sure the discussions that he had with Bubba Cunningham and Chancellor Guskowitz were about, it needs to stay inside the family. And when you think about it, I have a kind of interesting analogy that popped in my head. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Coldplay, and I saw their one of their documentaries, and they almost kicked out their drummer at one point, but then they decided to retain him, and they're like, we're like a family, and we grow as a band together. And there's the same kind of energy here with, like, can you imagine actually bringing in someone from the outside, and then like it just doesn't, there's not the right fits, it's not the right personality matches, people are moved out and moved in, and it's kind of that Matt Doherty experience all over again. And then we're starting all over again, you know what I mean? And how would we now have to rebuild some of the wounds, or perhaps that were created in the process there. So definitely I was pleased to have it stay in the family, even though, I was opening myself up to those other possibilities. And Mark Few in particular, I'd sort of kind of bought in on that potential, because he seems like a really great coach, and he seems like he's got a lot of the same characteristics and kind of tenets or beliefs in how he approaches things. So I think I could have bought into that, and I think that could have worked, but ultimately it stays in the family, and it just seems right, feels right, and it seems the perfect fit. And hopefully, of course, the on the court product will match, and we'll get the results that we want as well.
Yeah, and the family, I said too, like, we need to kind of look outside the family, and it, it's not to say that Mark Few couldn't have came in and become part of the family and led us for 10, 15 years or something, and who knows what it'd have been like, but we don't need to find that out. I think, again, the former players, and we've talked, again, on this podcast, through Twitter, all the time, we talk about the family and how much the old players coming back and scrimmaging, the pickup ball with the NBA guys or the former guys, and what that, what makes North Carolina different. And that's kind of the core of it, is those, obviously the family off the court, but on the court, those pickup games with the NBA guys and the former players. And I think a lot of former players were worried that if an outside guy comes in, do they have kind of the free reign of the Smith Center like they do now? I mean, it sounds like, from the stories you hear from some former players, like they pretty much have a key to the door. They know where to turn the lights on, and they can go anytime, day or night, and get into the Smith Center and get workouts in, get shots up, or just kind of be around the Smith Center. And you never kind of know that, if you, like you said, if you bring somebody from outside the family, what changes.
Yeah.
And I do think, oh, go ahead.
I was going to just probably tack onto that I think it is major changes. And every transition from coach to coach, there's going to be some evolution. There's going to be some differences, and we're going to see that. And I think we're excited to see that in Hubert versus Roy, and Roy certainly different from Guthridge and from Dean. So I think we're going to see enough of the changes that we hope to see. He's going to bring his own style to it, but staying true to the foundations that's already in place, which is something that he referenced in the press conference.
Right.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. And but I was just going to say, like, the other in-family option that a lot of people had was Wes Miller. I think Hubert is a little bit better fit in that, he talked about in the press conference of Roy keeping his office. Like, he wasn't, he wanted Roy to kind of have that office. And, when you mentioned Doherty, when he came in and the changes, that happened around the program, he brought his guys in, he kind of did things his way, and it rubbed people the wrong way. I think Hubert is sure enough of himself and in a position to where he doesn't have to worry about, like, putting his own stamp on it and making it drastic. He can keep the core of what we know, like you were saying, but yet make his tweaks, or, whatever you want to say here and there, put his style in. still feel comfortable with Roy being around without that being kind of a pressure on him. I think you see it all the time with John Wooden, and people talk about the pressure that every coach coming after him felt because he was always around and he was always kind of there and nobody could kind of take over. And even with, again, like with Doherty coming in, felt like he had to kind of make these drastic changes, make it his program as opposed to the North Carolina program. And, Wes being a younger guy, again, I don't know, we'll never know what he would have done or how he would have done. He maybe would have been fine and been a great coach for the next 40 years. But just being that younger, maybe would have felt like he had to put his stamp a little bit stronger on the program, and kind of let the guys know that, hey, this is my program now. So I do think, like you said, and we've continually said, Hubert being the perfect fit here. So other reactions here that we got here, Loy joined, said his press conference got me so pumped. Like we've said, is it October yet? We're ready. And something I kind of threw out on Twitter as well is like different name. What do we name Late Night with Roy now? What do we got? So go to Twitter, find that tweet, and if you got a creative suggestion of what we call Late Night with Hubert, or I've heard Hanging with Hubert already. So if you got something creative, go to Twitter, find that tweet, and send it at me there. So she wants us to get into thoughts on assistant coaches, possible transfers that we may reach out to. We can get into that a little bit here, but again, we got to change this name. I don't even want to try to pronounce this name, but this is Hubie, from a scared looking freshman to head coach, first year at North Carolina in '88, to I love a guy from my era getting the job, and saying his history with Dean and Walter Davis makes this a sort of perfect circle within the Carolina family circle. And I mean, again, his press conference, he kind of talked about how important that is to him, and he wants every kind of generation to be kind of even on his staff. Obviously, everybody to be involved, but again, going to that assistant coach thing, but he wants somebody from each of those. And so we'll get into that a little bit here. And then Grant follows up with, he's all in after seeing the press conference. Hubert said all the right things. On to the next chapter we go. And so that is kind of my concern. And I'll kind of let you go first if you want. If you want to throw it back to me, that's okay too. But concerns that you would have with Hubert Davis, obviously no head coaching experience being a pretty obvious one, but other concerns you maybe have. We've talked about the good, the passion, all this, the other side of it, concerns that you would have with Hubert Davis now becoming the head coach.
Yeah, and I wrote about this on Keeping It Heel, started to write for them, and my first response was this the right call? And every concern that I had, there was like a reason for it, or a reason why that can still be okay. And that's the main one. That's the big one. He has no head coaching experience in the D1 level. He's been the head coach for the JV team. And if you know someone else, Roy Williams was also the JV coach for the head coach for the JV team at Carolina before accepting his first head coaching position at the college level. He was the head coach for high school, and did quite well at Kansas without any previous Division I head coaching experience. So I took solace in that, he's been mentored well for years under Roy Williams. Roy Williams had a similar trajectory in his coaching career, and look at what Roy Williams accomplished. So hopefully Hubert can do, even just a percentage of that well, and we'll be in good shape, in terms of winning percentage, in terms of accomplishments on the court. And of course, we all are going to be pleased with what he brings to mentoring young men, to helping them grow and succeed academically, and the things that he said in the press conference about Garrison Brooks and that sort of thing. But I think that's your number one concern, is his lack of head coaching experience. I wrote about how Roy Williams, he's such a hands-on type personality, and he really, he wants to tackle every challenge that comes his way. And I think that, he had so much going on that perhaps the assistant coaches didn't have as much opportunity as they might at other universities. Now, I don't know that, of course they have the scouts. So Hubert had the role as a scout, and I heard, I think it was on the Inside Carolina podcast, they were talking about he had the scout for Kentucky in 2017 in the Elite Eight matchup. And, earlier in the season, Malik Monk really torched them. And in that game, the Tar Heels really frustrated him and, of course, prevailed on Luke May's shot. So we know that he's been given assignments, of course, in his role as an assistant coach, but how much has he been given that free reign? Of course, now he has it. So it'll be interesting to see how he recruits. And that's such a unique thing now. It's changing, the landscape of college basketball changing. Do you want the elite talent? And he talked about that in the press conference. Or do you want like really good talent that's going to stay for a few years? Because we see year after year, typically in the NCAA tournament, that the teams that make the deepest runs that are playing on the last Monday have some experience. They have juniors and seniors. And of course, they're high quality talent too. But so it'll be interesting to see how he manages that. I'm really curious.
Yeah, it will be. And other things, I don't necessarily buy into all these, but other concerns that I've heard people say is his demeanor on the sideline. Everybody talks about, off the court, he is just the nicest guy that you'll ever meet, and kind of just go on. And does he have the demeanor to kind of be a head coach and, get after people? But it sounds, I've been to a couple of JV games, and I wasn't there necessarily to watch JV games, so I wasn't paying attention to all that. But, in JV games, it's kind of like during a pandemic. There's not a lot of people in the stands, so when a coach gets after you, you kind of hear him, and, he'll get after guys. And there's stories about in the locker room of, like in the press conference after a game of guys being asked, like, what did the coaches say at halftime? And it's like, Roy said this, but really it was Hubert that got after us. And there's the story of in the championship, right, of in 17 when they won, of, hey, you guys got a second chance here. I went to a Final Four when I was a player. I never got that second chance of redemption. And you guys are right here, and you're kind of blowing it right now. And, of course, we came out strong in the second half, and, he got after them. And so I don't think we have to worry about that demeanor. I think he's, we're used to Roy and how competitive he was, and you kind of alluded to that. But I think Hubert's kind of right there too. I think as an assistant, it's harder to show that. You can't be standing up, or you're going to get technicals and all this, and it's not really your place either. You're kind of there to pick guys up after the head coach, I don't want to say berates them, but gets on them, and so he doesn't have a place to kind of do that as an assistant. But now that he's there, I think we'll see that kind of come out of him. And I don't think you have to worry about the demeanor. You mentioned the lack of experience. That's something that we'll just kind of never know until we get there. But everybody has to be assistant before they get their first head coaching job. Like you said, Roy was an assistant for 10 years before he got the Kansas job. Now Hubert's right at 9 years. But I heard the Inside Carolina podcast before he was hired, kind of going through all the candidates that they had heard, and kind of every one of them, it was before their big job, they were an assistant. Mark Few was an assistant all the way up until he got Gonzaga. Now, Gonzaga wasn't what it was when he got it, but Jay Wright even was an assistant. I think he maybe had one other slightly smaller job before he got Villanova. But, again, everybody's an assistant before they get that head job. So you kind of have to go with your instinct. You have to go with, what they tell you in the interview, all that good stuff. But
it always speaks a lot to, an organization, and, looking at the University of North Carolina in that same regard of, when you hire from internally, right? When someone has taken all the steps, been there for years, shown that they can do all the things, they've done everything they've been asked to do, and then you reward that, you celebrate that, versus reaching out and being like, yeah, okay, you've been great for us, but now we're going to bring someone else in, So I think it's the right statement to make too, that, hey, this is how we celebrate our family, and we reward our family's dedication and hard work over the years, and we believe in you, and we give you that vote of confidence. Like you said, we're not announcing this at this certain point in time, like, oh, we couldn't get better. This is who we wanted. You're the right fit. We're moving on. But yeah, I don't think we need to worry about Hubert's demeanor. I agree with you. You probably see a much different Hubert Davis on the sideline of the JV games than you would, of course, in the assistant role, letting the head coach be the head coach. Right. So we forget he's a competitor. I mean, he played for 4 years under Dean Smith. I mean, no one wanted to compete harder than Dean Smith, and no one wants to compete harder than the players on the court. And then he played in the NBA for 12 seasons. So
well, and I think, we mentioned earlier that he was such an overachiever. Like you don't go from having two small, low major, mid major, whatever you want to say, scholarships to going into North Carolina, where the coach doesn't really think you're going to get much playing time, to being an All-American, making the Final Four, being a starter,
if you're a pushover,
making the NBA for 12 years. Yeah, if you're not competitive, like those things, don't happen. So before we get into, again, the assistant coaches and transfers here, as we wrap up here, Tar Heels and Kicks, is he read that Hubert told Roy to keep his office, which we kind of alluded to as ready, but says, do you think Roy will coach some kind of way behind the scenes and from the stands? And there was a video on Twitter, I'm sure it went out to other social medias as well, but Roy kind of congratulating Hubert and kind of talking about Hubert and stuff. And he said, I'll be there to cheer you on, and I will never criticize you. I'll never blame you. It'll always be the ref's fault. And I think Roy has that he kind of knows he needs to step out of the way. But I also think Hubert, like we said, kind of has the demeanor. He has the security in himself to know that it just can't happen. It's his job now. It's his call. He'll take the blame. He'll take the credit, whatever comes with it. But I think Roy knows better than that. And I think Hubert knows better than that. So I don't think we have to worry about that. Again, Hubert will let Roy kind of roam the offices, have his office, be around as much as he wants. But I think Roy will know better than to say anything. And I think Hubert won't let that happen as well. That it's his job now. And he's going to, again, add his style and his personality to the program.
And Dean did the same thing for Roy, and I'm sure that they maintained a great relationship. I'm sure Dean would answer any question that Roy had for him, but would never, give his advice unsolicited, necessarily, and certainly wasn't there to be critical of the head coach's decision. So I think that I'm confident in the way that's going to transition, and they'll maintain a good relationship. Hubert, I'm sure, will reach out to Roy probably every day about something, you know what I mean? But not the overall. I agree, and I really appreciate that you made that point about Hubert being confident in who he is. And so that's the type of person that is ready to be a leader.
Right. So we're going to go back to now what happens, going forward here. He's won the press conference. We're all ready, and we're jumping on the Hubert bandwagon here. And where do we go from here? So first, obviously, and not that it happens in this order, but he's got to be going after transfers. He's got to be hiring his staff, all that stuff. But let's start with assistant coaches. So it hasn't been announced or confirmed, I don't think, by the university or by Hubert or anything like that. But we have heard that Kendall Marshall is out. He was like the assistant director of operations or something like that. A lot of what he did was social media. And then also that Steve Robinson was not going to be retained either because he's retiring. We don't know, we don't know, again, hasn't been confirmed by anybody, but either he's retiring on his choice or just not retained by Hubert for, again, maybe that's Hubert kind of saying, I need to kind of make this my program and I can't have this older, I don't know. I don't really want to speculate because we just don't have that information. But that Steve Robinson and Kendall Marshall would not be coming back as coaches or a part of the program next year. And so that leaves 2 open spots as assistants because obviously Hubert's spot becomes open and then Steve Robinson's becomes open. I've heard, or it again hasn't been announced, but that Sean May will be jumping over he was the director of operations, now becoming an assistant and having a kind of seat at the bench. And so that leaves 1 spot, obviously, as an assistant. And then, I mean, obviously he could take other guys and you kind of make up, names as far as to make them a program. But I've heard the names Kings Rice in there. I've heard Jeff Lebo, which obviously his son, Creighton Lebo, is on the team right now as a walk-on. But they are both kind of in there for that position. But there was also the comment that Hubert made in his press conference that he wants guys that played for Dean Smith. Well, he didn't say played for, but he wants somebody from Dean Smith. He wants people from Guthridge and from Roy Williams to kind of be a part of that. Obviously, Sean May takes the position of Roy Williams players. Brad Frederick played for Dean Smith. And so if he really meant those guys as head coaches, that would mean there's going to be some other addition of somebody that played for Guthridge in those 3 years that he was the coach. again, just having names thrown out there. Obviously, there's names of like Vince Carter, Antoine Jameson, people that aren't in coaching right now. We'd love to see them back at the university in an official, some type of form. But Shamad Williams has some coaching experience. He was at Western Kentucky. I believe he was at Tulane as well as an assistant. And he has made it known on his podcast that he wants to get back into college basketball coaching. He would, of course, love to be at the University of North Carolina. I don't know if his aspirations are as a full head coach. And like, I don't know, again, if Hubert works out, like we're all hoping and kind of foreseeing, that spot's not going to be open for, another decade or two, hopefully. So if he has those kind of aspirations, I don't know if maybe a jumping off point, but I don't know your thoughts on kind of those hires, or if there's other things. Again, I haven't been on Twitter much today, but if there's other names that you've heard thrown out there.
I had heard that Hubert has a good relationship with CB McGrath. And so, obviously he was an assistant.
Now, would he be considered a Carolina guy? I know he was at North Carolina, but Hubert was like, we're going to have Carolina guys.
That's true. So, I would probably be more likely, I agree with you, to see a former player. And you've got several out there. You've got, King Rice, he's head coach at Monmouth. And Shamon Williams, that's an interesting one. I think that'd be really neat. And Rashid, potentially.
You're not going to let that one die.
I'm not going to let it go, for sure. And who else were we thinking about?
Well, Jeff McInnes is in. I don't know if he's I think he's high school, but also he's into the AAU as well. Jeff McInnes is into coaching. Yeah, I mean, obviously, King Rice would have to.
Has he been doing any coaching?
I think I've heard an interview. I don't know if it was on the Carolina Insider or where it was, but I feel like he was doing more of kind of like camps and back in his country of kind of promoting basketball. I think he may even be like the head of basketball for his country. So I don't know that he's coaching, but he's still involved in basketball. Jeff McInnes.
J.R. Reed is an assistant to King Rice at Monmouth. So if King Rice, he could be certainly one that I could see coming over. And I think there was overlapping King Rice and Hubert Davis playing careers there at Carolina. So I could definitely see that. But if King Rice opts to stay, perhaps J.R. Reed could even be considered as an assistant. But I think Shamon Williams and King Rice are probably stronger candidates overall to fill in that position.
Yeah, so obviously King Rice would have to kind of take a step down from being a head coach at Monmouth to being assistant at North Carolina. So we don't know, again, his kind of aspirations there, how he would feel about that. People were saying like, oh, Wes Miller could come, but I think him being kind of the other option wouldn't play out well with Hewitt being the head coach. And, then is it like putting pressure too? Like, well, if you don't work out, if you don't win enough games, we got Wes here that's going to jump in and has head coaching experience, so I don't think that's really a possibility. I don't know that Wes would want that. I don't think it would be a smart move. So I don't see that happening. Tar Heels and Kicks, mentioned that Rashid is coaching in high school. I feel like there was I don't know if it's George. I don't think it's George Lynch, but I feel like Adam and Jones from the Carolina Inside podcast went a couple years ago, and there was an older coach for us, and then had an assistant. There was also, I'm trying to remember who it was.
George Lynch, isn't he coaching at a school in Atlanta?
So maybe it is George Lynch, and then he had somebody younger that was his assistant, and I'm trying to remember who. I don't know if it's Melvin Scott. I don't remember who it was, but there is somebody. Yeah, I don't know if it's George Lynch or not, but somebody that is. And I feel like it was around Atlanta too. That's coaching. So there are possibilities out there that people are in coaching. Like I said, even if he filled one of those spots with King Rice and brought somebody else on as obviously the director of operation, basketball operations, where Sean May's old spot has to be filled by somebody. So, if somebody else comes in there with kind of the promise of once an open seat as an assistant opens up, it's yours kind of thing, they may agree to something like that. But yeah, that's. I would love to see CB McGrath. I think he's an awesome coach. I think the players loved him, but just how strongly Hubert said he was going to have Carolina guys and stuff like that, I kind of wonder if it's not, that it's not going to be CB McGrath. So Grant Bowden says we should hire Michael Jordan as an assistant coach. He could do all the recruiting.
Yeah,
He might be taking a slight pay cut to become an assistant coach there.
All he would have to do to recruit is just make a phone call. So just wanted to touch on George Lynch, that he is the head coach of Clark Atlanta University as of 2018. That's what I found on Wikipedia.
It doesn't mention his assistant coaches, does it?
No, I'll keep searching for that.
All right. Well, let's transfer over. I can look a little bit for that as well.
Do we want to talk about the transfer of Walker Kessler and the fact that was brought up, since we mentioned the word transfer?
All right. Well, quickly before here. So Lori says George Lynch, she kind of was researching along with you, is at Clark Atlantic. So maybe she can do some research for us on the live here. Lori, if you can look up who's the assistant or assistants. Is there a UNC guy with him at Clark? But Tar Heels and Kicks says, why isn't Steve Robinson returning? Again, we don't have all the information here. It hasn't been officially announced. I guess he still could, but either he wants to retire, he's kind of going out with Roy, or for whatever reason, Hubert feels like he needs to go kind of with his guy or something like that. But people have been asking too why Kendall isn't returning, but I think it's that Hubert kind of needs to get more veteran guys. He can't have Sean May and Kendall Marshall become assistants where they have no experience, and then he's got no experience as a head coach, and he's got to get, I think, kind of that strong. And I think it's smart. I think in today's game, it's all about your staff. The head coach can be as good as he wants to be, but the stronger staff you have, obviously the more success you're going to have, recruiting and all that stuff. So yeah, transitioning into transfers. You were starting there, so I don't want to kind of take it from you. You can jump in where you were going with that.
Well, there became a little bit of buzz. Then we kind of got an inside tip, and then there was the question asked at the press conference about Walker Kessler to Hubert Davis, and Hubert was very open. I appreciate how open and honest and direct Hubert is in communicating, and he said that he would love to have Walker Kessler back on the roster, that he's a Tar Heel, he belongs at UNC Chapel Hill, and that he had a phone call scheduled for later in the day, so has probably transpired at this point. And I haven't heard any news coming from that. Not that I expected an immediate response necessarily, but clearly there's some discussions and communication to potentially find a way to retain. Now, I don't know about the transfer portal, but I guess you can remove your name from it.
Yeah. So I did. There was a tweet. I think it was from Sherelle McMillan of Inside Carolina. Kind of talked. I think it was somebody on Kessler's side, but that they talked for like over an hour. It was a good talk, and I mean, obviously, yeah, like you said, nothing definitive decided there or anything, but they would have to just kind of decide going forward from that. But yeah, you can, just take your name out of the portal, and he could come back. There wouldn't be any penalty to that. And I've seen. I think the relationship with the players would be completely fine for him coming back. I think there would be fans that some of them are going to say, he's got to apologize. He's got to do certain things before we welcome back into Tar Heel family. Obviously, Hubert does not feel that way. He made it pretty.
Hey, when he starts averaging clear. A double-double, I think the fans will quickly forgive.
Yeah. So again, I mean,
that speaks. While we're on the topic, I mean, that speaks to the openness that Hubert has in some changes, obviously.
If he's going to consider coming back
to the system, right? That he wants to imprint his style, and that he's willing to, I'm going to use the term modernize a little bit, the style, while still keeping true to the, UNC basketball foundations that are in place. But clearly he's comfortable enough having that conversation about, because my understanding was it was kind of a style difference, but maybe it could have been a personality clash between Roy Williams and Kessler to a degree. Maybe there's a little bit of both. And now that there's a different personality that's in the leadership role, maybe that's what the conversation centered around. But I think there has to have been a decent part of that conversation, if it was an hour-long conversation about the style of play and what your role is and how I see you fitting and what we're going to kind of let you do or expand on what you did this past season. So clearly I think that demonstrates that Hubert is willing to adapt and modernize with the with the changes in the college basketball landscape.
Yeah, I mean, from Kessler's post too, when he was leaving, it sounded more of like there was no hard feelings towards North Carolina, and we kind of figured that it was style that he was leaving. And so, yeah, if Coach Davis is going to come in and play a different style, and he can say, relay that to Kessler, and he believes him, then obviously, there's a chance for him to come back. So other recruits that we have coming in next year, both of the signed recruits, Styles and Dunn, have both kind of cemented that they are committed to the University of North Carolina. They kind of said before even Hubert was hired that they were going to, more than likely stay committed, and reiterated once he was hired that they are committed to the university. They're not going to open their recruitment back up. As far as other names out there, I don't follow recruiting enough, and there's so many. We mentioned this on a previous podcast. There's so many guys in the portal right now that it's hard to kind of know, and that speaks to we don't know how he's going to recruit either. If his style is going to be different than Roy's, then he's going to recruit a little bit differently. We don't need 4 bigs, or we need different bigs, or whatever it is. He's going to recruit differently, so we can't just say, oh, we're going to, this guy would be a good fit. This guy over here is going to be a good fit, because it's going to change under Hubert Davis. So there is, I don't remember the guy's name, but there was a guy that was committed to Marquette, I believe, that is kind of a stretch, 4 or 5. I mean, not that it really matters. A stretch big guy out there, and from the state of North Carolina, and so people have kind of latched onto his name and said, that we will be or should be going after this guy. Again, we don't know. Hubert, like he has said, his phone has been going off the hook, ringing constantly, I'm sure. And obviously, they have to kind of get their bearings about them to see who they're going to go after and all that. But I guess we should also mention that just earlier tonight, Armando Bacot announced that he would be putting his name into the NBA and testing the waters. He did word it a lot differently than Day'Ron Sharp did. Day'Ron kind of said, I'm going to the NBA, and didn't really leave the door open to coming back. And Bacot kind of said, I'm testing the waters. I'm going to kind of see what feedback is, and I'll make a decision from there. So obviously, we have to kind of wait and see what happens with it. We've said every year, I have anyway on this podcast, it's smart for guys to test the waters, hear feedback from the NBA, see what they need to improve on. And if he can get a promise in the first round, then he probably is gone. But he hasn't been on draft boards all season, so I don't know how that would happen. But I guess in a workout, whoever knows with the NBA.
Yeah, I agree. The way that I interpreted his quote, his text, or excuse me, his tweet, was that he's, I think he said, I'm ready for anything. And so he said he's going to test the waters. And I think he very much left the door open that, hey, if it all goes well, then I'm going to make, why wouldn't I make the leap? That's where my aspirations are. But if I just get a bunch of great information, and I, get to see what the process is about, I think I have a good relationship, and the door is open, and I'm welcome back to UNC. So I think he absolutely should. And all of us fans have become accustomed to that process. And, we saw it work successfully for Justin Jackson, Luke May, and hopefully for Armando Bacot. Of course, my heart is hoping that we'll see him in a Carolina uniform next year, but, we're going to pull for him no matter what jersey he's wearing next year, as long as it's an NBA or a UNC. And I got the name of the Marquette potential transfer is Jonas Adu.
Adu.
I had to look that up.
I knew it was Adu, but I didn't know his first name, so I didn't want to put it out there. But so yeah, 300 says, "Come back, Kessler. We love you." I think most fans are going to welcome him back if he does come back, and then the other ones that don't, like you kind of said, once he starts putting up the numbers that we would kind of expect that.
I mean, the 3,500 fans that were in the Dean Smith Center were chanting Walker Kessler. I mean, I think he was already a fan favorite, so we'd quickly re-adopt him, if that's a word.
But it hasn't
Dan, do
technically
you
been
remember?
adopted out, so we just have to bring him back home. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Bring him back home. I remember that before Roy retired, that there was a contact to a Florida. There was like several players out of Florida that were entered the transfer portal. Do you remember?
Yeah, there is one player, especially I remember
It
that
looks like
people
you're
were kind of
muted.
saying.
Either that or I lost my volume.
I don't look like I'm muted. Can you hear me now? All right, I'm not muted, but I'll keep talking. Maybe can you hear me? I can still hear you.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Maybe it was I lost juice to mine. Todd,
But
sorry about that.
that's all right. There is a Florida player that people have kind of latched onto, saying we should go after. I don't know the names. I don't follow that well enough. But we will kind of keep everybody updated as that goes forward. Of course, follow us on Twitter. Like I said, subscribe on YouTube and hit that bell if you want to join us live. Make sure you subscribe wherever you are listening to, so you catch all the podcasts. Before we do go out, though, Lori informed us, and I did catch this too as I was looking for that assistant, but George Lynch was not renewed at Clark Atlantic. He was let go, or pretty much just his contract wasn't renewed last year, April of 2020. So he, has experience coaching, head coaching. He was also in the G League for a while, coaching there. So yeah, he's out there again. I haven't really heard that name. I've heard more about Lebo and King Rice possibly coming back to join him, but we'll get that information as we go. And as Hubert gets kind of settled into being the head coaching job, like I said, make sure you are subscribed where you're listening. We're kind of at the point now where we go one podcast a month, unless there's something else big here. We've had a big couple of months here for Tar Heel basketball, so we'll see kind of what's going forward. But we thank you guys for joining us. And Gil, unless you got some parting words here.
I think, we're excited for this new era. So, gosh, if only the season could come around soon enough. But I think this gives, Hubert enough time to establish himself and recruit the players he needs to recruit out of the transfer portal or perhaps out of high school to field a really competitive team. Hopefully finishing in the top 3 of the ACC would be an excellent goal for this team next year, I think.
Yeah, 2021 and 2022 season will not come soon enough. We'll be ready. And I know I kind of mentioned how weird it'll be seeing somebody not Roy Williams on the side. I think Hubert Davis leans that a little bit towards a little bit of normalcy there because a lot of this, or some of the staff, and we've kind of seen him there already, even though it wasn't standing up. But everybody excited to kind of see how he reacts to being on the side there. And how the players react and what we look like as Carolina basketball. But as Lori says, thanks everybody for joining. Gil, thank you for joining me here tonight. And we can't say it enough, but we'll say it one more time here as we end here. Go Heels.
Go Heels.